on the internet, followers from SoundCloud, Instagram, or if you're just happen to be passing by and you decide to stop and listen to this podcast today. My name is Matt and I welcome you all to the Fueled by Coffee podcast, where we like to drink coffee, talk about life, and have a few laughs along the way. Today I am back in the saddle with my co-host Aaron. We're going to be talking about some habits, mental health, self-confidence, wellness. It's going to be a nice positive and uplifting episode, which is good. It's funny, I was just listening to our Men at Work episode yesterday. I was cleaning up some things, tidying up, and just listening to the older podcasts that we've done. And the Men at Work one, while great and funny, it can be overly negative at some points. So,
yeah, I seem to remember there were a lot of negative stories coming out of that.
So I'm glad to be doing a more positive episode, and I hope that it maybe inspires someone listening, or it's just an uplifting, listen for those checking it out. If you like what you hear, give us a follow here on SoundCloud. You can also check us out on Instagram at Fueled by Coffee Pod. We have shirts, we have stickers. Definitely go check us out. We post regularly, and these episodes come up every 2 weeks. We're in the middle of season 3 right now. We got lots of fun episodes behind us. Football, fantasy football. I had a really nice nerdy discussion with my old coworker Rob on the last episode. So we got something for everyone and a lot of good stuff moving forward. So definitely check it out on SoundCloud. We have a playlist with all of our episodes from this season, but we're going to jump into today. As we do every episode, we have a different type of coffee, or we just try to have some sort of coffee. And today, I'd like to give a special shout out. As of this recording, yesterday, New England Coffee Company followed me on Instagram, so big shout out to them. I have been a fan of their coffee since sometime last year. I got their blueberry cobbler flavored coffee, or it's just blueberry. It's really good. I was not expecting to like it, but I also have today their Hazelnut Creme coffee, which my wonderful girlfriend just purchased for me for Valentine's Day. So shout out to Kayla, I appreciate you, but also shout out to New England Coffee Company for making some great coffee, because this stuff is phenomenal. And I'm also pretty hyped because after we get done with this recording, I'm going to head over to Wawa, please sponsor me, and I'm going to try one of those new burger and fries that they got right now. I was so hyped to find out that they had burgers and fries. You know what? I think they heard the episode from last season that I did with Party Cake, and I was pleading with them to get French fries or pierogies of some kind. I think they heard it. I think I started the movement.
That must have been it.
Yeah. Either that, or just from how much Wawa I've purchased and consumed in the last 4 years of my life, they somehow planted a chip in me and they just know what I'm thinking. Conspiracy time. But anyways, we're just going to jump right in. Shout out to New England Coffee Company. Shout out to Wawa. Love both of them. But today we're going to talk habits. This was actually something that you had brought to my attention and suggested last season.
That I did. It's just something that I feel strongly about, and I think it's a good topic to talk about.
And I was just thinking again today after I woke up from my nap from work. The episode that we did, the Men at Work one, you were talking about a man that you met at Panera Bread who became like a mentor to you. And I was like, you know what? I feel like that has been passed on to me. And Aaron has been a mentor type figure to me, because whenever I hang out with you, I feel like I get something out of it. I take something positive away from it, whether it's just, looking at things through a different perspective, or being like re-inspired to do things. Like I feel like there were so many times with doing music when I was so like, I don't want to do this, and like you'd be like, well, just take a break then, or like it just it happens, but don't give it up completely. So I feel like I always get something positive out of hanging out with you. So I was thinking, you know what, Aaron he's become that man that he met at Panera Bread many years ago.
Wow, I'm honored, man.
Humbling you once again.
I don't know if I'm quite at his status, but on the right path. It makes me feel good.
How old was he?
I don't know. He had to be in his 70s.
Well, you're not anywhere near that. So, but yeah. So always good talks. This was something that you suggested, and it was funny, like trying to come up with the outline for this. It was really hard for me because it's something I'd never really thought about. Like, took the time to really think deeply about. It just over time it has come to me like okay, like this would fit good there, this would fit well there, and like I mean we have an outline that's so long that we probably won't fit everything into the episode, which is really cool.
But we can try. Let's start talking really fast.
Like those car salesmen. I want to see a brown dub Kia.
Yeah, either car salesman or auctioneer.
Or
all right, now we're talking about mental wellness.
Or like one of those like medication commercials that they play on like during The Price is Right.
All the side effects.
Yeah, like for they speak so fast that the old humans watching The Price is Right won't be able to like catch it. They're like, what? But yeah, so jumping right in, we're going to start off with being a creature of habit. This is something that people who are close to me, who know me well, know that I am very much a creature of habit. I'm not opposed to change, but when I find something that works for me, that's what I do. Like, I just stick to it. So, like, the question that I have written down is being a creature of habit a bad thing?
What are your thoughts on it first?
I think to an extent, no. I think it's good to have structure, and I think it's good to, like, for me, it's mainly all about being efficient, which I blame on my time at warehousing, and some of those measures of like just being efficient I've carried into like my regular day-to-day life, which we'll get into then. But I think sometimes it leaves me so like kind of uptight about things. Like there's been times where like Kayla and I are trying to make breakfast together, and because I'm so like this and this to get to this end result, and she's like she does things so much differently than me. Like there are times where I've definitely been like, you're in my way, like,
right.
And it's definitely, that's like an adjustment for me to get used to. But I think to an extent it's good to have structure, and it's good to have positive habits. But like, in the negative part, like I said, sometimes I can get a little too uptight about it.
So I'm going to say something here, a little spoiler alert for you and the listeners for the rest of the podcast. A lot of where I fall on these issues are going to be tiptoeing the line. There's definitely a case for good habits, and there's a case for bad habits.
Yeah.
Being a creature of habit can be good if those habits are building towards positive things. I don't want to say improvement or moving forward, because those are often associated with words like ambitious, and some people aren't ambitious, but they're still making small steps forward every day.
Yeah.
Or it can be construed differently, and I don't want that to be taken in the wrong way. If your habit is something that you are striving to do, and it's something that's inching you closer towards that goal every day, I would think it's a good one. If it's something that you're doing just because you're comfortable and you don't want to take the leap to change or adjust something just because you're comfortable and you're, I don't want to say afraid or fearful, but that's always something that's underlying in a lot of decisions in changing something.
Mm-hmm.
I could say it could be taken as negative, as you're kind of stagnant.
Like it's good. I think it's good. Like I said, for me, it's mainly a structure thing. But as you're saying, like with becoming stagnant, I've seen it like personally.
There's certainly nothing wrong with structure.
Yeah.
I strongly encourage people to have structure. I think it helps with time management. It helps with prioritization of
That's
of
mainly
tasks.
what it is with me, yeah. I've seen, personally, I may cut this, like with my dad, he is so stuck in his ways, like, and it negatively impacts, like, my family. Like, he's just, like, in the way, or, like, he does things that my mom has been asking him, like, please change how you do this for 30 years now.
Right.
And so, like, there's a point where I think you need to be open-minded to that change and making it a positive habit.
Sure.
Whereas, instead of stagnating and being like, well, this is just how I do things.
And why not be open to compromise in situations like that, especially over such a long period of time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one small change of when you get your second cup of coffee or something could make all the difference. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I guess to round it out, the negative would be if you're stagnant and complacent with where you're at and it's not where you want to be, but you're not doing anything to change your habits to put you in a situation where you can have a chance to succeed or reach your goals or get to where you want to be. I would think that could be construed as negative.
Right.
But the overall, having a routine, having a bag full of habits, for lack of being able to think of the right word, is mostly a good thing, I would think.
Yeah. I see that you picked up The Compound Effect. Did you want to...
I did. I did want to reference the book, The Compound Effect, written by Darren Hardy.
We've both read... You recommended that to me. I read it last summer.
I did. I guess the full title is The Compound Effect: Jumpstart Your Income, Your Life, Your Success. But the overarching theme of the book is small things done every day and built on over weeks and months and years is how people reach success and reach their goals, rather than going full force right away, putting all your eggs in one basket. Maybe not necessarily that reference, but I mean, one of the major metaphors he uses is like getting in an exercise routine.
Yep.
Where everyone's like, oh, I'm going to start going to the gym, I'm going to get in shape, and they go for 3 hours for the first day, and then they're so tired that they don't go back for another 2 weeks till they're fully recovered.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who goes and does 5 minutes on the treadmill and says, okay, that was a good start, comes back the next day, does 5 minutes for 1 week, then they go the second week and, okay, I'm going to try and do 10 minutes now, and just builds and builds and builds on that, has a much higher percentage of sticking to going to the gym than that person who's ready to go 110% and not necessarily burns out, but kind of overworks and doesn't stick to it.
Right. And I think the big thing that I got out of that book, so that book, I feel like for me, like the first chapter was really helpful because he talked about, like you said, taking small things and I guess growing them into habits over time. That was a really helpful chapter. And then the last two, I remember I got a lot out of. There was one reference or one quote. He said something about like, you know, which this is something that I have practiced for years, but I just didn't know how to put it into words for people. Is like, I don't pay attention to the news anymore. Like, obviously I would like to think an intelligent human being and I can, you know, judge right from wrong. I try and stay educated on things, but like my family is notorious for getting sucked up in the news and getting very upset about what's going on,
right?
Based on their own personal motives and feelings on things. But like for me, I got to the point where I realized how stressful the news was, so I stopped paying attention to it because like I would read all this stuff on Twitter and I'd read like the Google articles. Like I muted the Google articles. You should see my muted words list on Twitter because I just don't want to see it, you know?
Right.
I stay educated, but I surround myself with the positive things that I love, that I am passionate about, such as music and podcasting and, you know, my relationships with, you know, friends and my girlfriend, you know, just the things that I enjoy doing because that brings me so much more joy. And the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because in The Compound Effect, towards the later chapters in the book, he says something about, I think he knew a coworker, similar situation, they're getting so upset, or they were like just putting all this garbage into their mind, and he basically used the example of, well, if you turned your faucet on and dirty water came out of it, would you still drink it? No. Because, so it's just basically saying like you're allowing yourself to put that toxic stuff into your body. And I was like, that's the perfect metaphor for what when people say like, well, why don't you watch the news, or why don't you, and I just tell them I focus on what makes me happy, and I block out all this I try and block out as much negativity as I can, and that's like the perfect metaphor that I could think of. So that's a great book. And the other thing that I got out of that book, in the earlier chapters, he talks about saving money. And for the longest time, so like my last, like when I worked at Stitch Fix, I made enough money that I could save a ton of money every 2 weeks and then have enough in my checking account to do what I had to do. Whereas like with this job, I make significantly less money, And so, like, I felt like from week to week, it was like, well, I got to pay for gas. Well, I got to get certain grocery items. Well, John and I go out and we do this. Or Kayla and I want to go on dates. So, like, for the longest time, a year, almost a year and a half, I would say, like, well, I don't have enough money to save. Because I was just pouring it into other things. But in the book, Darren Hardy gives this example of, I think there was someone that was offered, they could either have like $3 million or $5 million right then and there, and then there was another person who saved a penny but doubled that penny every day. And at the end of it, the person doubling the penny had a significant amount more money than the person who just took the $3 million right off the bat.
Right.
And to me, I was like, huh. And it was just that whole premise of starting small and it gradually adds up over time. So I thought to myself, well, if I put away $25 a week every paycheck over a year, that's going to amount to like, I think like $1,200 or something like that, like, or $1,000 more in my savings account. So I was like, I'm just going to do that. And it is definitely influenced me a lot to start saving, which is a good habit, I think.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
100%. All
right. So in terms of like habits, as I said, mine is all about efficiency. And I feel like that was ingrained into me. I mean, I went to Votech in high school, and so I did masonry. And so that was like, you got stuff to do. You got to make sure the job is done on time. But I kind of carried, I've always had a really good work ethic. And so I carried that into when I was in warehousing with Peapod and Stitch Fix. And especially working alongside Mike, the guy who was on the Peapod episodes, he, was all about systems and having structure. And I mean, he was like, he didn't care about chaos if things were chaotic, but he was all about like systems. And so like, for me, I've carried that over into like, what's the best way I can do things in my like personal life that gets me the best result in the quickest amount of time, I guess. And so like one of those things is like making breakfast. Like I do things in such a manner that I get it done quick, and I have things like all laid out. And as I mentioned earlier, there's been times where Kayla and I are both trying to cook at the same time. And I'm just making a bowl of oatmeal and she's making eggs. And because of how I do things, I feel like I'm just like, I can't get in that zone that I get in when I'm by myself. And so there's definitely been quite a few times where I've been like, you're in my way. Like I'm trying to do stuff and like I can't do things the way I normally do. So and I feel almost like this pressure or like this feeling like
you're falling behind a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like almost like this PTSD thing from warehousing. Like I'm falling behind when in reality it's like, dude, you're making a bowl of oatmeal.
You're making breakfast.
Calm down, So like I think like for me personally, like when I'm alone, these habits and these routines, they work really well, but it's something I need to work on, like you said, compromising and finding a way to kind of like flow together in a way. The other thing
could just be a bigger kitchen
or that. The other thing is at work. With my baking job, I have things figured out to such a T that I do the same things at the same times every single day. But that works in my favor because I know that all of my work will be done when it's supposed to be done at my deadline. And also that it allows me enough wiggle room that say something would go wrong, I have a little bit of extra time to try and correct it or, find a solution to the problem.
Right.
So like getting those systems and finding that efficiency for me makes me feel more comfortable, whether it's at work or at home. So to tie into one of your points, you actually got me into meditating. You had suggested the last time, I think I was having trouble sleeping. I mean, I've been having trouble sleeping off and on for the better part of 2 years, but you had suggested meditating. And so now I've worked that into my routine in the morning. When I get home from work, what I started doing is, so what my previous routine was is I try and eat something healthy for breakfast. I usually allow myself like one unhealthy meal, like one unhealthy breakfast per week or two, depending on how bad the week is going. But like what I would do is I would eat my breakfast and then I'd play a round of like Madden or NCAA football, depending on whatever season I was in the middle of, play a round of that, which took about 45 minutes to an hour. And then I would, get ready and lay down and go to sleep. And I noticed that like for a while that was fine and I could go to sleep no problem, but I started having this trouble sleeping during the day, and you suggested meditating. Like, so why exactly do you meditate? Because I forget what exactly. I feel like you suggested it to me because I was having sleep problems.
Right. It definitely could be that. It's just I think I meditate for a couple different reasons. One is that I find myself thinking about so many different things at the same time.
That's right.
And not being able to focus on one specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask many people that I know. I love to bring up a lot of ideas. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's try this, man. Let's start this business.
Yeah.
And I'll start it, and then I'll be like, well, what if we do this instead?
Mm-hmm.
Or like just go all over the place. So I'm trying to reel all those thoughts in and really stick to following through on what I say I'm going to do.
Right.
So that's one reason. I also think it slows down your pace of life. It gives you a chance to step back from everything that's going on and just kind of feel yourself, I guess.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Oh,
it's hard to describe until you actually try it, and then the description is not necessary because you just know what I'm referencing.
Yes.
The third one would be relaxation. If you're having trouble, whether you can't focus, whether you're focusing too much, whether you're just overthinking about something, just deep breathing and allowing your body to experience the relaxation and just the weight of everything being gone for no matter how long it is. I don't do very long meditations.
Do you do guided ones? Or
yes.
do you do... Okay, that's what I do as well.
I do a little bit of both. I started out, when I first tried meditating, I just started out in silence. And that was one of the hardest things to do, was sit there and I would just be like, is this over yet? Like, it would just take so long for 5 minutes to pass.
Yeah.
So then I started getting into the guided meditations more, and now I kind of do a mix. But I haven't really been sticking to it, and I'll circle back on accountability later. That's part of my bullet points here. But back to your thing, there's many reasons you could do it. One of them is definitely having trouble sleeping or like clearing your mind and being able to put yourself to rest.
Yeah. So what I did is I basically substituted out the GameCube football time for meditating to try and help myself get to sleep either at a better time or I don't know. Everyone always says about blue light stimulation, and I've never really had that problem. I have blue light filters on pretty much everything I can have them on. But I just think that stimulation of playing a football game and calling plays and trying to win like that, maybe that was kind of working me up, subconsciously. But I subbed it out for meditation, and I used the app that you recommended, Shine. I started using that app, but I also will go on YouTube and just look up whatever it is I'm trying to do, before sleep or for relaxation. Or again, the time of this recording is the day after Hazelnut Day. The day before Hazelnut Day, I worked, and I had over 1,000 donuts to fry, 1,400 donuts. I did the math, and it was such a stressful, frustrating day. I had a migraine when I got home. I was just not in a good space. So I found one for letting go of the workday, and it's one of those weird things. Like you said, you can't really describe how it feels to just feel like that weightlessness, or just that everything just kind of fading away until you try it and do it consistently. But yeah, so I subbed it in. It's a positive change. It's been a positive change. It's helped a lot. I try and do it at least once a day, but I shoot for twice a day when I can. I'll do it once after work to kind of clear my head, and then I'll do it once before bed to get me ready to sleep.
Yeah.
I did one too, just to wrap up on this point. I did one about self-compassion because, I had some stuff going on mentally the one day, and I was like, I wonder what that is, so I did some research, and it said that I could be suffering from a lack of self-compassion, which I understand to an extent. I could see that. So I did one for self-compassion, and dude, it had me crying. Yeah. It was very, very strange. I got very emotional throughout it, and it's one of those things that I used to not be a firm believer in meditation. Kayla told me that she would do it. She's into that stuff, and I was like, that doesn't work. Growing up like and this isn't meant to be a dig at anyone, a Christian boy, which I still have my beliefs, but like, I was like, that doesn't work. That's not, But then I tried it, and I was like, wow, like that was really powerful. Like it really helps me personally. So, meditation, really good habit to have. But let's double back. You were talking about accountability. It's something we've talked about quite a bit.
I could say I've gone on and off trying to hold myself accountable for years now. There's so many that I can't count in different ways, and read about it and researched it, the best ways to do it, the most effective ways to do it. And it can apply to a lot of different areas of life. Holding yourself accountable at home, in your relationships, with your job, holding yourself accountable to yourself, to your personal goals. So I've applied what I found to be helpful to my goals specifically, and I try to apply it to all of life.
Yeah.
But I had done this exercise challenge with my family. Early 2019 we started doing it, I think. And it was, a friendly competition of who can exercise the most consistently throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that competitive nature of it, and like, I'm a visual person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I'm a lot of different things, but I find myself being able to hold myself accountable more when I can see my work in action. And when I say see, I mean literally see, not the effects of the work, even though I see that with exercising too sometimes, not more recently. But like charting it. And I'm going to get this reference wrong, but there's some story about Jerry Seinfeld. He would practice his comedy every day and put a big X across the calendar whenever he did practice his routine and work on jokes. Mm-hmm. And that would hold him accountable. And that's how he got to where he is because he would never let that streak of X's stop. And he practiced so much in a row that he just had so much good material that came out of that.
Wow.
So I adapted that philosophy, and we kept a little chart of who was exercising. You would mark an X every time, and we had this Excel spreadsheet that would calculate the total every month and the total overall. And just seeing that number and seeing those X's kind of kept me going. I'm like, I've been going 9 days straight. I can't break the streak today. I got to get to the gym. So that since has ended, but I carry that over into what I label as my life tracker. Okay. It's a spreadsheet that I keep that I track when I meditate, if I read, because I try to read every day, if I exercise, and right now I'm trying to build a career in software development and web development, so I have coding on the list. Right. But I've been thinking a lot about that because it's taken away from other areas of my life, and I've been thinking about rotating that category specifically to a couple different things throughout the week where it's not that every day. But I think a solid foundation of meditation, exercise, and reading consistently every day. Yeah. And trying to hold myself accountable that way. Right. And you're gonna have days where you fall off and not get it done. You're just running out of time. Different things come up. But I think just being able to visually track those results is very powerful in actually holding oneself accountable.
For sure. I got a planner for the podcast for the year of 2021, and that is definitely, I guess, been similar to what you're saying. Is like I see all these dates I write in to record, and I always check them off afterwards, or I set these goals of like when I want certain things done. So I could definitely agree with what you said about
and to piggyback one more point on that.
Go for it.
While tracking your goals is a good way to hold yourself accountable, you also have to set measurable goals, and you have to set reasonable goals. Yes. That are measurable. If you shoot the moon and say, I want to lose 100 pounds in a month, not happening. You're setting yourself up for failure. Mm-hmm. It's next to impossible. I'm not going to say impossible. I'm sure somebody out there has done it. Yeah. But it's next to impossible to achieve that. And when you start to go through the month and you see that you're not on track to do that by the end of the month, or you're not seeing the results that you want to see, it's going to negatively affect your mindset. Therefore, fighting your almost fighting against yourself, where you're trying to hold yourself accountable, but you're seeing these negative results, and it's fogging up your mind and kind of pushing you back from where you want to be.
Yeah, and I feel like Darren Hardy touches on that in the compound effect as well. Yeah, good stuff. That's the one thing I've always heard about, like New Year's resolutions. I saw that a couple of years, like maybe beginning of 2020. You know, someone said, like, I don't set New Year's resolutions. I pick a bunch of small goals that I know I can achieve.
Yeah, I think it's been floated around a lot as far as setting goals that are measurable and attainable.
Yes.
And that can come down to hourly goals, daily goals, weekly goals. Like it can go to a very micro level.
Yeah. All important stuff. Let's move on right now to positive mental attitude and self-confidence. One thing that you and I have talked about quite a bit is not liking the sound of your own voice. This is something I think as a musician, for sure, that we have all experienced. If you've sang at any point in time, if you've recorded yourself singing, definitely one of the biggest things that most musicians and singers and voiceover people and who, you know, what have you not, we all go through it at some point or another, is not liking how your own voice sounds. And it sounds fine when you're talking, but then when you hear that playback, there's just something about it. And I watched a video years ago. I feel like it was a Vsauce video. If you've ever watched Vsauce, it's like educational stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff on there. I feel like it was Vsauce, but at the same time, maybe it was just a Google article I read. I found out that the science behind it is that when you speak, you're not only hearing what's coming out of your mouth, but there are low frequencies that you're hearing internally that are like, they're vibrating. It had something to do with vibrating the bones in your ears or vibrating your eardrum internally. And so those low frequencies kind of adds this extra like layer of bass to your voice, or this extra frequency to your voice, so then that only you hear. So then when you record, that frequency, that extra little whatever is missing. So when you get the playback, you just get like the nasally, like whatever's coming out of your, you know, like what others hear basically. Which I thought was really interesting, because for the longest time, like when I first got into doing music, the Union Coffee Break stuff, I would record these vocals and I thought they sounded terrible. I was so insecure about it. As I touched on in the first episode, I would drench my voice in reverb because I hated how my voice sounded. So I think knowing the science behind it is a little bit more comforting to know, like, it's just cool to know, like, why we don't like our voice, because, you know, we're hearing something externally, we're hearing something different than what we're hearing internally. But I also think it's important to just embrace who you are, like, you know, whether it's your voice or just who you are in general, you know, as a person. And I have a couple points on that then, but you were the one who brought up about the not liking your own voice. You were the one that suggested that. Yes, I absolutely despise my voice. So was there anything that you want to tie into that?
Well, first off, I would like to say that you have a fantastic podcast and radio voice, and
thank you.
I haven't heard many who could do it better.
Well, thank you. I've heard that from quite a few people. I'll have to tell the origin story of the podcast sometime, because that's one of the things I've heard from. It's usually older people. They're always like, "You have such a great voice for radio." I remember one time when I was in like 8th grade, I had one line in the church play, or I had a paragraph to read in the church Christmas play. I got up and I read my line about whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I had probably half a dozen of the congregants come up to me, and even the pastor, and they all said, "You have a great voice. You should go into radio." And like, you know, I just kind of forgot about it. And then people have told me here and there. There was one point I went to a thrift store with my old friend John a couple years ago, because one of our old classmates was working there who I hadn't seen. It was this goth girl, Megan, really cool, like really at Saucon, really out there, but like I always thought she was cool. We always, clicked. And so we went so I could say what's up, and she was like, we were in a different aisle than her, and we kind of like both came out of the aisles at the same time, and John was like, "Oh, hey," and she goes, "Oh my God, like, what's up?" And it was like, "Oh, you have a beard now, like, that's so," and she said, I was like, "Yeah, I didn't think you'd recognize me." And she said, "Well, I heard you from the other aisle. You have a very distinct voice. I knew it was you as soon as I heard you." And I was, so like that combined with having all those people at church years ago tell me, "You have a voice for radio," that kind of sparked the thought of like, okay, well, maybe I should do the podcasting thing. Even today, I dropped donuts off at my grandparents' house, and my Grammy she left me a voicemail yesterday, and the first thing she said on the voicemail was, "Have you ever thought about getting into like TV voiceover work? Because you have a great voice." Like, it's just, I've been told that by so many different people. So that's something that it makes me a little more confident, at least in my speaking voice,
Yeah. And I guess to go back to why I hate my voice so much, it's that when I listen to mine compared to, and there's a key word, compared to, you should never compare yourself to other people.
Yes.
It's actually very bad for your mental state. But I listen to these people speaking at conferences, on YouTube channels, and there's a difference in dictation, I guess. I think they speak clearer. I think their pronunciation is better, and I think they come across as better speakers. And maybe that's because I don't have much of a background in public speaking. It's something on my list of things to improve on.
Right.
Same goes with singing. You listen to other people sing, and there's just a different tone quality. And again, I think a lot of it stems back to the clarity of words when I speak. I don't feel like I have a very crisp dictation,
right,
where people can understand every word that I am saying.
Maybe we should stop doing the podcasts and start doing them like this.
But yeah, I mean, I've just owned up to it. Like, I've come to the conclusion that this is my voice. I'm not going to change it. I can work on improving it, but it's always going to be the same frequency, quality.
Yeah.
And I just have, I don't want to say given up, because that comes with a negative connotation, but I have accepted that this is my voice, and instead of keeping the mental state that I don't like my voice, I'm going to embrace that it's my voice and make sure that everybody can hear it.
Yeah, and that's good, and that ties into the next point I really wanted to touch on. Was it's important to just embrace who you are. If there are things you can control and change, by all means go for it. But something like your voice, that's just you. That's how your vocal cords are made up, and how you were structured from the time you were a little fetus inside of your mother, like it's, not to put it in a weird way, but that's just who you are. And it's hard at times to, there is such a thing as toxic positivity, but it's just important to, as you said, like, just realize this is me. This is, part of my genetic makeup or my physical, whatever. And I think it's important to just love who you are if it's something you can't control.
100%.
And I mean, as I said, if it's something you can control and it's something you can change that you don't like about yourself, then by all means do it. Because it's never, and I always try and tell people this, I'm only 23, but I always try and tell people it is never too late to start doing something. That is one thing I have learned in my short life that I've lived so far. And to tie into that, like, I had this moment last Wednesday. I had a bit of a stressful day. I worked for a couple days straight, and I know people are probably thinking, a couple days straight, well, like, my schedule sucks because I work in the middle of the night. But, and I had my car in for repair, so I was stressing about that, and, like, I was just kind of like, man, like, I hope this, stressing about money, like, I hope this doesn't cost a lot, and, just trying to figure out, like, where am I going to pull this money? Like, am I going to have to pull money from my savings account, which I really don't want to do? Just having, like, this weird stressful time with work, and knowing Foshnot Day was on the horizon. Like, that's one thing I'm really bad at, is sometimes I look too far ahead and I start working myself up about things that aren't even here yet. But I had this moment where, the car got done. It was more expensive than I was hoping, not by much. And I was sitting there dwelling on it, for like an hour afterwards. It's like, man, like there's an extra $100, like more than what I wanted to spend. And, instead of just being like grateful that my car was fixed and being like, my car is good now, like it's going to pass my emissions next month. And it's, so basically like I was dwelling on it and I was like, man, like this sucks. Like not that I was short on money, but like I'm very like structured with my bank accounts. I don't like to get below a certain point. I like to have a nice, like I have a cushion available, for if things like this do come up. And I said, well, there's one of two things. I could either not transfer this extra $100 from my savings account, and then I will be stressing about money for the next 2 weeks. I will literally only have money for my car loan, my gas, and my savings. And I'll just be like frustrated because I won't have much money or any money to be like, oh, I got to go run to the store and pick up bananas, or I want to get coffee, or I want to get something to eat with Kayla, like these little things that I think self-care is incredibly important. So it was either I transfer this money and I just live my life, or I don't, and then I'm like frustrated and upset and about money for the next 2 weeks. So I got to the point where I just said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I have the money in my savings account. It's only $100 plus like income taxes coming in. We're supposed to get this other stimulus check, so like it's going to be fine, So I transferred it. I had a couple things I had to run out and get at the store, did it, and I just spontaneously was like, you know what, I'm going to buy myself takeout from Williams. For those who don't know, Williams is my favorite diner. If anyone asks me, where would you like to go eat, Matt? I always say Williams. So Williams, please sponsor me. But I was like, you know what? Like, I really want Williams.
That's a weird way to say Wawa, isn't it?
Oh, you caught me. I am so sorry, Wawa. No, if we're talking diners, it's Williams. Oh, man. Now I'm torn. Now I'm upset with myself, Aaron. Thank you.
Don't, because we're going to tackle mental health in a minute.
But anyways, so like when I woke up from my nap that day after work, I was just like really hungry because I had been eating really good throughout the week, and I was like, wow, I'm actually hungry, and I was like, I really want Williams, because that was a regular thing when I hung out with John. For those of you who have been listening to the podcast, I did a couple episodes with John. We are no longer friends, but when we were hanging out every week, we would always go to Williams like 90% of the time. And that's something I try and do regularly because it brings me joy. I like going there. I love their food. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to transfer this money. I'm going to go to the grocery store and pick up what I need, and I'm going to get myself Williams for dinner, because it's important to, if it's within your means, to take care of yourself and to do things to make yourself happy. It all has to do with, like I said, self-care, which I've been doing more research into recently. And I had this moment where I was like, when I was driving to Easton to, get my food and go to the store, I was just like jamming out to some tunes in the car, and I was like, you know what, like, I really love who I am. I was just, and it's not to like gloat or to sound self-centered. I was thinking about like all the cool things that I do, and like growing up being so judged at school for who I was and who, I felt so insecure for so long. And I was just thinking in the car about like, man, like I'm into all different types of music. Like I had my SoundCloud on shuffle, and like all different stuff was coming up. And, I was thinking about the podcast and making music, all the different types of music I've made, and, my multifaceted interests, which I talked about in the last episode with Rob. Like, I'm into really nerdy stuff like Dragon Ball and, collecting Funko Pops and playing video games. But then I love the Eagles and football, and, I love going to diners and different places to eat. I love cooking and baking and
wrestling,
thrift stores and wrestling. Like, how could I not mention that? I'm so disappointed in myself tonight.
Twice I've disappointed yourself.
It was just one of those things where I was really just like, I had this deep dive into like myself, and I was like, man, like I'm really happy with who I am. And I think if you would have asked me 3 years ago or 4 years ago if I was happy with who I was, I wouldn't have been sure. I think a lot of things have changed in my life in the last 2 years, 3 years, that has gotten me to this point. But like at this point, I can comfortably say like, yes, I really am happy with who I am. and it was just this weird moment, of like clarity and just like, wow, like being thankful. And as you have told me, you were trying to practice gratitude, just being grateful. So that's my little story on embracing who you are, because I think it's important to try not to look at all the things you don't like about yourself and look at these little things that you do like about yourself, So that's my rant on that.
So building off of the little things that you take away that are positives, let's switch over to mental health. And I think I would prefer to focus on PMA, positive mental attitude, rather than diving into the negative side. We can definitely touch on the negative if you want.
No, let's keep this more positive.
Okay. So, positive mental attitude, building on your wins, building on anything, even if it's the smallest win of the day, like you getting out of bed and not stepping on something sharp like a Lego and hurting your foot. I don't know.
I was hoping you were going to say Lego.
I was actually going to say George Foreman Grill, like Michael Scott in The Office.
Michael Scott, please sponsor me.
But no, little positives.
I did a meditation on gratitude last night before I went to bed.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It was good. I had a little bit of I don't know. It was like one of those evenings where like you have these little moments where you're like, well, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to happen, or and it was stupid. And it was one of those things where I know from personal experience, going to bed in a bad mood, you will wake up in a bad mood, and you will carry that with you to work. So I was like, what, I'm gonna do like because the one thing on Shine that they have you do whenever you check in is like check in on your gratitude. What are you grateful for today? Which I think is really a good thing. It's definitely shifted my mind in a positive direction. So I looked up a meditation on gratitude, and he basically just said, like, think about the most basic thing. Can you walk right now? Can you breathe? Can you taste? Can you smell? Can you see? Things like that. Just thinking about all those little amazing things that your body can do right now, because there are people that have no legs, that are blind, so like the fact that you have. And for them, I'm sure they're just grateful to be alive, even if they have those handicaps,
Right. Yeah, and gratitude is very powerful for both or everyone involved. From what I've found, and I'm sure there's plenty of research, plenty of studies out there that have been done, but the practice of gratitude can go a couple different ways. One is journaling. I'm striving to keep a gratitude journal where I just write down one or two things that I'm grateful for every day, whether it be a person, whether it be a thing, whether it be something that I'm able to do that other people aren't, whether it's something that I'm able to do just because I wanted to do it. And that's put my mental state in, and I try to do it in the morning. That's important.
Yeah.
Because it starts your day off right.
Yes.
And you feel good right from the beginning. And it could be, again, going back to those very small positives. It could be something that somebody else would look at and be like, well, you're not even doing it. Like, that's nothing. Mm-hmm. But in your mind, you're grateful because you did that, and it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Along with that, I'm in the process of coming up with a list of people that I'm grateful for having in my life. Right. And I am notoriously bad at keeping in touch with people. So I'm extending this list as far as I can reach in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm slowly, whether it be one day at a time, whether it be 1 week at a time, reaching out to these people and just sending them a message, sending them a text saying, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just want to let you know I'm really grateful that I got to know you at some point. Yeah. I know we're not close anymore, or, I know I don't keep in touch very well, but I'm grateful for the experiences that we had, and I normally pinpoint a specific thing that I can think of or a specific memory that I have with that person. Yeah. And say, this is why I'm grateful, because you made me the person I am today. Yeah. And one, it makes me feel on top of the world. Like I couldn't be better. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I also in my mind hope that the other person would read it and be like, oh, that was a good time, and like think about it, be a little nostalgic and make them feel good as well in that kind of, there's too much negativity in the world to begin with.
For sure.
Like you referred to before, the news is just a negative dump.
Mm-hmm.
And everywhere you look, things aren't good right now. And not that they're always good before the pandemic happened, but they're definitely not good now. And to have that little, just even if it's that flittering second that you send that message, to think that somebody else is a little bit better off because of it.
Yeah.
It makes you feel even more on top of the world.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I actually have been contemplating doing that the last couple weeks. And it's crazy because one of my first few meditations on Shine was give yourself permission to do something you've been wanting to but have been holding yourself back from, which was really cool. And that's something, like, I went through a pretty rough period mentally in my life a few years ago. As you know, you were there through it with me, and there were just certain people who really were there for me and supported me and held me up when I was just not me anymore. And so I've been thinking, I have these moments at work where, if you're a regular listener, you would have heard about the different thoughts that go through your head when you work in the middle of the night, or for me personally. And there are lots of nights where I have these really vivid flashbacks to that negative time in my life. But then I always try and spin it to, well, I'm really thankful that I had these people, because without them, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. And so I've had this, want in my mind to, like, I want to text these people and say, like, hey, thank you for being there for me. You were a huge help. Basically exactly what you said.
Right.
I wouldn't have become who I am right now. And some people, it's harder for me than others because at the time of this recording, I don't talk to them.
Right.
And I don't want to say we're not on good terms, but we're not like best friends like we were years ago, months ago. It's more so just wanting to be on good terms with people and, like, let them know I'm thankful for being there for me, and just wanting to be on good terms with them. And some of the people, it's like, people I just don't keep in touch with as well because we have our own lives. We're doing our own things,
Life happens.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it's cool that you brought that up because, like, I've been trying to do the same thing recently.
Right. So to wrap up gratitude, I think practicing gratitude for yourself and to spread positivity to other people, and just to appreciate everything that you have. Again, no matter how small or how large.
Yes.
Because there inevitably is somebody somewhere else that doesn't have the same, whether it be privileges, whether it be physical things, whether it be mental attitudes, that somebody doesn't have that same thing that you do. And just be grateful for what you have and what you can do.
Right.
So moving on from gratitude, in this positive mental attitude, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with holding yourself accountable, but actively trying to stay in that positive mindset, no matter what comes at you.
Yeah.
I like to consider myself a very positive person. That's not to say I'm positive 100% of the time, every single day. It would almost be a feigned positivity because of life happening, and because
you can't grow if you don't lose at some point.
Exactly. Or if you're not challenged, or face hardship, or face an obstacle. But with all that said, all that rambling, I try to stay positive, and I try to spread the positivity to other people, because I think you don't know what other people are going through.
Right.
And you don't want to. A lot of people think, oh, I can help this person, or oh, I can fix what's wrong with this person. And I think that mindset is limiting in itself, because you don't know what's wrong, so how are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
But just spreading positivity, just saying, hey, how's your day going? Or checking in, even with acquaintances, even with people you don't know, just showing common courtesy and not being a rude person. Going back to, there's so much negativity, there's so much that's bad in the world.
Yeah.
And I think we as human beings have to take it upon ourselves to flip the narrative and take control of spreading positivity and what we can control. And I think implementing these habits, practicing positive mental health exercises like meditation and practicing gratitude and journaling can only enhance your success rate or your potential to succeed by that much.
Right.
By trying to consistently implement that and spreading that to other people.
Right on.
Closing thoughts?
Good wrapping point. Closing thoughts. Well, what did we talk about today? We talked about habits. We talked about meditation and holding yourself accountable. Why you should embrace who you are, even if it's just the little things. Accepting the things that you can't change, but if you can change something, try to change it and hold yourself accountable. PMA. I mean, I think this was a really good episode. I hope that we could give some sort of either a positive injection or some sort of positivity into your day.
I could talk about this stuff for literal days on end.
We have plenty of things we didn't hit on, so we're gonna have to do another
If anybody
episode.
wants to continue the conversation, feel free to reach out to Fueled by Coffee Pod. Shoot us messages, shoot us comments. We're always scouring the boards to jump into conversations.
If you're here on SoundCloud, leave a comment.
Yeah, definitely.
I love getting comments.
Comment, reach out to us. I think I speak for both of us when I say we both enjoy exploring this topic. And if you ever need to talk in general, whether it's positive or negative, don't feel like you can't talk to anybody, because these two guys at Fueled by Coffee Pod, they got a couple mouths and a couple ears, and they can listen well, and
we've got other holes too.
Speak better.
I'm gonna cut that out.
Oh my God!
You set yourself up for that one.
I did.
The episode just went from G to PG-13 in a matter of 3 seconds. Yeah, no, definitely reach out. Give us a follow on Instagram at Fueled by Coffee Pod. Check us out here on SoundCloud. We have so many other episodes out and so many other ones to come. Give us a follow. As I said earlier, we have merch. Our next episode comes out in 2 weeks, and it is with the fan favorite Sean. He refuses to believe that people love his episodes as much as they say they do, but I've been told by at least probably half a dozen people almost that they're like, he's got to be a regular co-host. But yeah, so check in for that. I believe we will be talking about my unhappy 21st birthday. That'll be a funny one. A bit of a downer, but I'm trying to play on the comedic sides of it. So check in 2 weeks. We have another episode coming up. Give us a follow. Give us some support. We got merch. Hit us up with any suggestions or comments about this episode or any episode. And Aaron, once again, thank you for your time. I always have a blast chatting with you.
Please, the pleasure is all mine.
Aaron will be on again. What is this, episode 5? So I think you're on again for episode 9.
I can't believe you keep bringing me back.
Well, you're the co-host now, bud. But we'll see y'all on the next episode of Fueled by Coffee Podcast.